What happens when Undercover went to his own orphanage, stunned by the matron's greed? Let's dive to see. In a quiet town where life moved at its own slow pace, there lived a man named Orion Gray. He was tall, with broad shoulders and deep-set eyes that seemed to carry the weight of many untold stories. Orion had grown up in an orphanage called Pinefield Home, a place he remembered as both a shelter and a prison. Now, years later, he returned undercover, driven by curiosity about how things were running now. Little did he know, this visit would uncover truths far darker than he ever imagined. Orion arrived on a crisp autumn morning, wearing simple clothes, a faded jacket over a plain shirt, and carrying nothing but a small notebook. The old wooden gates of Pinefield creaked open as he pushed them, memories flooding back like waves crashing against his heart. He walked through the familiar gravel path, every step echoing softly underfoot. The air smelled faintly of pine trees, just like it always had. Inside the main building, everything looked almost the same: chipped paint on the walls, cold stone floors, and long corridors lined with dim lights. But something felt off. As Orion wandered into the dining hall, he noticed fewer tables than before. A group of boys sat hunched over their plates, eating what appeared to be thin soup. Their faces bore expressions of hunger and resignation. "Who are you?" one boy asked suddenly, his voice tinged with suspicion. "Just someone who used to live here," Orion replied gently. "I'm just visiting." The boy nodded slowly and went back to his meal, but Orion couldn't shake off the sadness in the child's eyes. It reminded him too much of himself when he was younger. Orion decided to meet the current headmaster, Mr. Hargrove, hoping for answers. After some hesitation, he was led to a spacious office filled with expensive furniture. Sitting behind a polished desk was a man with sharp features and piercing gray eyes. This was Mr. Hargrove, a figure whose presence exuded authority yet carried an unsettling edge. "I understand you're from here," Mr. Hargrove said, leaning forward slightly. His tone was polite but distant, like someone reciting lines they didn't truly mean. "Yes," Orion confirmed, choosing his words carefully. "I grew up here. I wanted to see how things have changed." Mr. Hargrove smiled thinly. "Well, we've done our best to maintain the legacy of Pinefield, though funding has been tight lately." "Funding?" Orion frowned inwardly. That didn't add up. Back in his day, Pinefield struggled financially, but donations poured in regularly because people cared deeply about helping orphans. Why would that change? Determined to dig deeper, Orion spent the next few days observing life at Pinefield. What he discovered shocked him to his core. Supplies meant for the children, food, clothing, even school books, were being sold secretly to local merchants. Trucks came late at night, loading crates while the kids slept unaware, and all the money disappeared straight into Mr. Hargrove's pocket. One evening, unable to contain his anger, Orion confronted the headmaster directly. "Where does all the money go?" he demanded, his voice low but firm. Mr. Hargrove stiffened, his calm facade cracking. "Money? What money?" "The money from selling supplies meant for these children," Orion snapped. "Don't pretend you don't know." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Hargrove sighed, looking older and warier than before. "You wouldn't understand," he muttered bitterly. "No, you won't let me," Orion shot back. "Why do this? They're just kids. They deserve better." Mr. Hargrove hesitated, then spoke quietly, almost to himself. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. When I first took over, I swore to make Pinefield better, but the costs kept rising and the donations stopped coming. I thought, if I could just get ahead, just save enough, I'd fix everything. But once you start down that road, it's hard to stop." Orion stared at him, torn between outrage and pity. Here was a man broken not by greed alone, but by fear and desperation. Still, none of that excused what he'd done to those innocent children. The second twist came weeks later, after Orion exposed Mr. Hargrove's actions to the authorities. A new director was appointed, and reforms began immediately. Food improved, new teachers arrived, and the children finally started smiling again. Yet, during one of his visits, Orion met another former resident, a man named Calvin, who revealed a shocking truth. "You weren't the only one to come back undercover," Calvin admitted, his voice trembling. "Years ago, someone else tried to expose Hargrove, but they disappeared without a trace." Orion froze. What do you mean, disappeared? Calvin glanced around nervously. No one knows exactly what happened. Some say Hargrove paid off the wrong people, others think worse. All I know is, whoever it was, they never came back. Chills ran down Orion's spine. He realized how close he'd come to the same fate. But unlike the unknown hero who came before him, Orion had survived, and he vowed to honor their memory by ensuring Pinefield became the safe haven it was meant to be. As Orion left Pinefield for the last time, he paused at the gate, gazing back at the home that shaped so much of his life. The journey had been painful, revealing truths both bitter and beautiful. Yet amidst the sorrow, he found hope, a reminder that even in the darkest places, light can still shine through. Life isn't fair, he whispered to himself, but kindness can always find a way. And with that thought, Orion stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.